everyone. This is Amy DeLuise for Gals and Gear, and we're here on the Tequity HUB, and we have a great program for you today. If you're new to Gals and Gear, then you might want to know what Tequity is. That is our equation for equity in the industry, which we believe equals access plus visibility plus skills multiplied by a community that supports you. So welcome to our Tequity Tuesday. I'm going to turn it over to one of our fearless leaders and volunteers who has been a major force in the industry herself, Kimberly Skyrme. She's a casting director. She's also a director producer extraordinaire. She does a lot in the narrative film space, and she's been a major force in our Gals and Gear network. So welcome, Kimberly, and I'll let you introduce your panel, and I'll see you at the back end. Thanks.
So happy to be here. It's important, and thank heavens for Gals and Gear bringing all of us together. And so important that women are upskilling and just learning about how to move their careers forward. So we have two amazing panelists today. We have Charlotte, who helps the creative industries connect over 10,000 professionals at the annual Media Production and Technology Show, delivering a strong ROI with their exhibitors and an exclusive insight and knowledge to their visitors. The event showcases over 300 exhibitors and 250 plus leading creative industry speakers in a program which is respected and revered in the industry. The direction of the show and planning for the next 5 years is in place and has businesses excited to be bringing their creative industries to an event which can offer them everything from pre-production to content distribution. Since the launch, the show has continued to attract new exhibitors and visitors, with many making their choices of MPTS to be their only UK show for their brand and services following the acquisition of BVE assets in autumn 2019. The show has doubled in size in 4 years. Charlotte also produces content for the broadcast, tech, and sports brands within the business. She is passionate about delivering the best show for all those who attend and support, and would love you to join her in 2024. And then we also have Frances, who's a senior manager in broadcast and virtual events. She has been in the virtual events industry for over 12 years. Her first major role was building a department that specialized in offering AV services for webcast events. Over the years, she has produced thousands of events, ranging from simple one-camera setups to large-scale studio events. She has volunteered her time for organizations such as Tequity and is a proud member of Tech Ladies and Latinas in Tech. Recently, she was contracted to be the programming coordinator for the annual conference at Coursera, and was fortunate enough to be brought back as the conference program manager. And of course, hashtag Gals and Gears holds a special place in her heart because she is pleased to be a part of the amazing team behind the event, and it pushed her into her public speaking, which is what we are here to talk about today. So just diving into it all, we'll start with Charlotte, since for this big event that 10,000 people come to. When you are booking speakers for a living, can you share what the changing landscape is like? And specifically, I love hearing how you are diversifying the panels that we see, because they end up being, as you called it, and I love this, manels that are happening in the conference industry.
Yeah, I am trademarking that, by the way, manels.
And we all heard here. We know it's our trademark.
Yes, it's being recorded. It will be put out live. Julia, my marketing manager, on here. Don't forget, Julia, we're trademarking manels. I've been doing this for 20 years now. I've worked for broadcast for 20 years. The show has had many iterations. The process for speaker planning is always around bringing excellence to the stage, bringing excellence to the forefront, but targets and objectives that I set myself and the team are very much around making it diverse, and drawing that diversity out of itself. And that is a job in itself as well, to be honest. I've seen many changes, not enough changes. I like to think that we're leading in ensuring diversity across our program. Our policy is no manels, as you mentioned. So we will have 2 men in conversation, but you won't see any more than that on a stage at one time. We're focused, a lot of our content is obviously focused around broadcast technology, which is very male dominated. So it does make the job harder in bringing that diversity in. But then that's a challenge, right? And that's a challenge that, you know, myself and the team are excited to do. And this year's show, we hit 50%, 50-50 in female and male speakers across our program. So we're super proud to be leading that way. It's but it shouldn't be an objective. It should just be part of planning my content, and that's where we want to get to.
And you have mentioned, which I think is very important, that although there are women who are experts in their field, that when you ask them to be speakers, sometimes they're a little reluctant. Can you speak to that with imposter syndrome and different things that are important for women to hear?
Yeah, so I mean, there are some women who it's just absolutely 100% no, not for me, can't do it. Public speaking, it doesn't matter, you know, there's some things that men or women don't want to do, to be honest. It's a human thing, isn't it? The imposter syndrome is a big one to overcome, because women who are in senior tech roles quite often feel that they won't be heard or listened to as much as their male counterparts on the stage. And so things that I say to people are, you're in this job, I want you to talk about your job. I don't want you to talk about opinions on AI or virtual production, because that's not what you do. I need you to be sharing your views on your job and what you do. And you'll see all the questions beforehand. It's all planned, etc. But the imposter syndrome is the main one. And never having done it before, trying to get people to have confidence in themselves that they can speak about what they do for a living, and just working with them, working that through. And it can take a couple of years sometimes of me basically pestering, going, come on, it's got to be this year, isn't it? Come on. And in a lot of cases we do finally get there, and when we do get there and they're on, 90% of the time they want to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're pointing out, so it bears repeating, that continually asking is sometimes the only thing that will get people to yes. Just because we receive a no from ladies, it shouldn't be our first stop. And does point out that, as Amy mentioned, that we are definitely planning to do some leadership and building a brand at NAB 2024. And very specifically, we were talking about public speaking, so it's important. And Frances, going to you, although today you're a speaker, this has not always been where you found yourself in the live event space. Can you share with us about that and your journey?
Sure. Yeah, this is not where I thought I would be. I prefer to be behind the scenes. I'm the one who's putting the events together. I'm the one who's putting the speakers together. I'm not generally, in front of the camera or on stage. And it was, through GALSNGEAR and Amy just asking me, hey, can you come with me to speak at NAB? And I thought, okay, so my first speaking engagement is going to be this massive broadcast conference with a lot of people in attendance, but sure, no problem. And then one panel turned into like 5 or 6 presentations, and it was basically just like going in, diving in head first. And was I nervous? Absolutely. Did I have an imposter syndrome? Yes. Did I briefly freak out before I got on the plane to Vegas? Yes. But once I got there, I just had to keep reminding myself and telling myself, you're an expert. You've literally been doing hybrid events for 12 years. If anyone can speak on it, it's you. So once I got that first one done, I thought, wow, this is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And especially having people come up afterwards and thanking me for my advice and wanting to exchange business cards, it just kind of like fed that, oh, I can do this more often. This is not as scary as I made it out of my head to be.
Which is wonderful. And it's so important for all of us, particularly as women and women who are booking speakers and helping the speakers, that we see people's potential and we really encourage that. And remind them that you are an expert. You know this better than anybody else, which is why I've asked you to do this. And certainly both of you that you book speakers for events, would love for everybody listening in to know a little bit more about how do you get booked to be a speaker? How do you curate the speakers that you're finding? And just give them a little bit of information on that, in case they happen to be an expert and we don't know that yet.
Shall I go first or?
Sure.
Well, I can see on here that a industry colleague, Hannah Robinson, is online. She's going to hate me for calling her out. Hannah, if you're there and you want to come on camera. So Hannah works for Doc10 in the UK. She's going to be my case study, live case study, because she's here. Hannah has been working for Doc10. There she is. And you can chime in if you like, Hannah.
Julie,
But
can you spotlight her?
there you go, got your fairy
This
lights
time
up.
of day, I'm not sure you'll want to.
So Hannah joined Doc10. Well, you're a graduate from when you joined Doc10. No, you've been somewhere else, haven't you?
Yeah.
No. But you hadn't done any speaking. And Hannah works with me at Doc10 when we do the Broadcast Sport Content Summit. And I popped her speaking cherry, as I like to call it, a few years ago and said, this is going to be great. You know, it's in your comfort zone. It's in Doc10. You came from sports. You know sports. We'll do all the prep. We'll do all the questions. And it's in your venue where, you know, so comfortable. I think that's always important as well, you know, explaining the setting, understanding the AV, slides, video, you know, all of these sorts of things that are going to be part of the session. So, Hannah, from your perspective, when I popped your speaking, chairing, and you chaired, you didn't just sit on a panel, you were chairing, which was a bigger responsibility. How was it for you, as they say?
It was very scary beforehand. And when you first asked, I was like, I can't do that. That was my immediate thought process. But after talking to you, especially, and all the team, you made me feel so at ease and like gave me a little pep talk before I went on stage as well. And it's not as scary as you think. And you kind of have to think, oh, these people are actually here to listen to me. I'm not. And you don't think that at first, but once you start thinking that, it changes your perspective on things.
And that's exactly it. It's preparation, your relationship, as we talked about earlier with the producers doing their research on you, you know, and understanding or spending time with you. When we'd spent a lot of time together, and I think, you know, Hannah's personality is one of those, and we had you up handing out an award, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago? You've done that twice now. Can't get her off stage now. Yeah, I just thought bringing Hannah in actually is a sort of perfect example of how you can go from, you know, never doing it to now whenever I ask her to do something, she's more than up for it and she's brilliant at it. Thank you, Hannah, for being my guinea pig.
I was hiding in the background at first.
Yeah, sorry, you know me. I could see you there.
Well, the real life examples are great. So see, it's not just theory, it's actual in practice. And Hannah has shown up. And we also, I would love to hear from you, Frances. You know, have you also returned the favor and plucked somebody out of not feeling like they were an expert and putting them on stage?
I definitely have experienced that in events where there was shifting happening within the company, and my, let's say, session owners or people who were going to be the moderators were no longer with the company. So we kind of had to go to our plans B and C, or look for someone who was like willing and able to be an expert and to then run the session. And I had one person who was nervous initially. I don't think she'd ever done it before, but once she saw her headshot and bio on the website, she got really excited. And she thought, oh my gosh, wow, like I'm gonna really work to make this a really great and engaging session. And she did, she killed it. And I was there like prior to, we did rehearsals. I did a training with her to get her comfortable on the platform. I was available to her if she had any questions about putting together the session. I remember she had concerns about one of the panelists. He was not as professional as the rest of the panel, so she had some concerns. But we just said, you know what, you just have to go with it because he's going to bring a different perspective. He doesn't have a traditional background, so maybe that'll work in your favor, and it did. I was there. I remember I watched the session. I made sure to ping her in our comms channel and saying, "Oh my gosh, you did great! You did great!" So it's really about like if you are going to kind of cherry pick someone, or if you are going to pull someone in who's never done it before, to be there and support them. And I always start with, I'm an introvert. I am not someone who likes to initially like to do these kind of things. I prefer to be planning, but I had someone cherry pick me to do it, and now I enjoy it. So I usually give that little spiel beforehand, and that usually gives them the encouragement because I can speak from the perspective of someone who was, a little shy and didn't want to be up in front on stage, in front of a lot of people and being on a panel and worrying about what I'm going to wear and worrying about like how I'm going to position my legs and is it a stool? Is it, like what kind of thing am I going to be sitting on? But really, once you're there, like no one cares about that stuff. They just really want to hear what you have to say. And as me being a woman and a Latina, I've had people come up to me and tell me, wow, it's really nice to see someone like you, like someone that looks like me up there. It gives me hope. So that kind of motivates me and keeps me going and makes me want to look for people who are from diverse backgrounds so that the panel just doesn't look very one note.
Which generally speaking, and this probably is not a surprise, and this is where we're all grown-ups here, we can use our reactions. For those of you who are watching, who considers themselves an introvert, show a little show of hands. Give us a little reaction there. Yeah, raising hand. Totally. Again, I start with the shame spiel as Frances, because I too painstakingly shy, and then you just get great at your subject matter, and somebody just has to give you the boot out there on the stage to do it. And then you do realize that people are really appreciative of your information. And often it's the introvert who's so passionate that passionate and enthusiasm cannot be hidden. So I think much like Charlotte has pointed out with Hannah, that of course she's happy to do it now. So I think I then found just the joy in it, that people are so excited about the information you have to share, that it's really important to do that.
Just another quick point on that, which Julia, our marketing manager, has pointed out, that within companies should be encouraging their staff to do it as well. So when we have our exhibitor open day, as Julia says, you ask us to go on stage. I don't, I force them. Because it's good for them to have visibility. I want our exhibitors to know who the team is. I know they're always nervous. I know it's not their favorite thing to do, but it's really important for visibility, and that exhibitors know who to go and talk to. So it doesn't matter. It's not just about speaking industry events. Companies, if they have their own internal events, Zooms, whatever, they should be encouraging a wide variety of people to speak and start building that confidence from within their businesses. So good point, Julia. Thank you.
Hey, Kimberly, this is Danilda. I'm here. Sorry about earlier. I couldn't get my feed working, but I'm happy to share a little.
Right. All right. Oh, please do. Yeah, we love the speakers who have, I mean, at some point I was kicked off the cliff.
I thought I'd be kind of a fly on the wall today, so I wasn't prepared to be on either. But GALSNGEAR has really given me an opportunity to really kind of flex and try to become the type of speaker in spaces that I don't think I would ever have had access to. And the encouragement that Amy's given me and you guys and the team to kind of push through some of the self-doubt that comes with being a first-time speaker or instructor in a professional space, because I have a background in education, and so I'm used to teaching, but speaking publicly is a little bit of a different feel. And so this past summer, I got to lead a panel on the main stage at a show called Infocom, and that was a huge deal for me. But it was big because, sometimes I think we're used to, like you said, the introverts kind of sitting down and just doing the behind the scenes work. We're used to being experts in that area. And then when you're in front of a stage of your peers, the pressure's on. But it was a great experience. You know, Amy helped me prepare. We got to get to know the speakers ahead of time. And this whole thing about public speaking really does boil down to your preparation and having kind of that key group of supportive people that understand your field to bring you up as a confident person in the space. So I really do appreciate kind of the work that I've gotten to do here personally in that area. And I just look forward to growing more. But it's people like you guys, the panelists here, who really kind of are out doing the type of thing that makes space for us that are different in the arenas. You know, we're not men, we're not necessarily white women, we're not people who necessarily always get to come on stage and represent our communities. And so that's another area that has been just humbling but exciting. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I think you did point out an important thing, which becomes an amazing foundation and can take away those nerves that people have certainly talked about, is preparation. And certainly Amy is a huge proponent of that. And I, having studied education too, being prepared is your secret weapon to, no matter what anybody throws at you, that you can't be knocked off kilter because you've really done preparation. So none of it, even if you're over prepared, none of that goes to waste because it's just your really concrete foundation of assets that you have.
I think sometimes I'll say something that I do pretty frequently is sometimes I do over prepare. And at times, even though that's a great thing, I think it's also something that you have to be mindful of because you have to trust yourself enough to say, I have already enough material with my experience. I have enough material with the people that I'm talking with on stage. If you're doing a panel or a conversation, you have to trust that as well. So there is a balance. And I wanted to point that out because some of us do try to over prepare, and that's not it either.
Wonderful. Well, thank
Hey,
you.
Kimberly, I just want to note you have a couple of questions. We have a question from Mary Lou's that I think is a really good one. Do you see
Yeah,
that?
which I love that one as we're talking about the fear factor of speaking, that it rolls right into that. And her question is that she would love to know how having a language barrier and being a public speaker, and what do you do if you're bilingual and you have faced some of the forms of discrimination because of her accent and pronunciation, in trying to overcome that and work towards being a speaker. Charlotte or Francis, if you'd like to respond to that.
I can. I was just at a summit at Expedia for Latino Heritage Month, and a speaker actually spoke about this because that was her concern as well. Was her accent. It made her feel a little bit uncomfortable speaking. Was anyone going to make fun of her? Was anyone going to not take her seriously? But then she had someone tell her that that's what makes her unique. That's what makes her special. And if there was anyone in the audience who spoke Spanish or was, let's say, too afraid to ask a question because they didn't speak English, she would be able to speak to them and then translate it right on stage. So it really just comes down to like you're an expert in what you do. And there is that fear and concern about how you're going to sound because of your accent, but your accent is what makes you special. It's what gives you power, especially in this day and age where being bilingual is not like when I was growing up, that was seen as a negative thing. So I was not taught Spanish. And it's something that I regret and my parents regret. But at the time, it was seen as a negative if you spoke Spanish. Whereas now it's considered a positive if you speak any other language. So really, that's kind of like your superpower, that you're able to communicate in multiple languages. And if anyone tries to make you feel any type of way about that or make you feel uncomfortable, it's jealousy. Honestly, it's because they can't do what you do. So just go in knowing that you're special and unique because you can speak more than one language.
Which we did have that conversation earlier, that you do need to see it to be it. So it is really important that we do have a diverse audience. And then this goes back to, so if you are uncomfortable working on that, those are also things that you can work on. And the joy of being bilingual and being an expert in your field. So I thank you for that answer. I think that's wonderful. And hopefully that has, encouraged you to just push a little further into being a speaker and know that, yes, your uniqueness is so important. and your take on it. And then we also did have 2 hands raised at some point here. So I wanted to just pop back to James and see what your question was. And you can ask it off camera or on camera. We just need you to unmic.
I don't think I had a question. I think I was raising my hand for the introverted part.
Okay, great. Was just checking just in case. And
And actually, you know, a lot of us who are techies are introverts, right? It's like a tech nerd thing. So I can
well,
relate.
there's the joy of spending, you know, job in your tiny places. And certainly I think that plays into that in a post-COVID world that everybody had this lovely opportunity to work at home, you know, that if you were already a little nervous, now that you're really used to being in your own space, not even just your own space at the office, but now your own space at your house, to actually break out and be a speaker. I'm sure now you're even jumping over a few more hurdles. And then also we did have another hand raised, and it may have also been to the introvert person. Question was that you, Brigitte, if that's how you say it. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. Lovely name. May also have been a hand raise to that. Oh, great.
Okay.
She responded in the chat. We love that. No problem. Being an introvert. So as we're talking about all of these things, we have, you know, the challenges of sometimes, you know, being afraid of being the expert, or feeling that, you know, potentially with your lovely accent that you may be not as easily understood from people. What are our challenges that we're facing in booking women when we have so few experts? If we could just chat with that. That I know during our, you know, kind of prelim talk, Charlotte, you were talking about the fact that there is so few women, and that some of them are very high up in organizations, and it's tricky for them to get away.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes them less available, because they are wanted at so many events. There's lots of senior women. I mean, for the event I'm doing next week, I'm also the non-exec director for Rise, which is the Women in Broadcast non-profit based here in the UK. We have an outlet in US as well, but I put a shout out on that WhatsApp group this morning going, right, female CTOs in post, hit me. And the suggestions were flying in, and I was like, yeah, not available, asked, already on the panel, not available, not available. You know, so we're all going to we're all thinking of the same pool of people, but because it's small, I've either booked them or they're not available because they're at another conference or they're in a big meeting or something like that. So whilst there are more women than there were 10 years ago, that's, you know, completely true in this space. There's not enough of them for me to be able to have full female panels in broadcast technology, because it's just impossible to get them out of their day jobs. And I was saying before, you know, sometimes unfortunately I do have female speakers who have to cancel, and they have to cancel because their child is poorly, which, you know, isn't very nice. You know, people want to do on the platform, but as I said before, it's very rare I get an email of a man cancelling for one of my events to look after their children. So I think that may not sit well with some people, but that's the fact of the situation that we're in.
Which again, this just further points out that we do need to be encouraging women to move ahead with tech and move up the ranks. And for these women who are in charge and can't get away, that they're also curating and cultivating speakers from their own organizations that are women who are working underneath them. And again, that becomes hard because their plate is already so full. But as we, you know, can curate that and help women become better speakers.
Well, and we said earlier, or as I said earlier, they'll say, oh no, but my colleague blah blah can come, and they say, oh, you know, it's John whatever, and you're in your head, you're kind of thinking, oh, how can I respond to this, in that I really wanted you because you're a senior female in tech. I don't want John, who is, you know, it's a really, really hard balancing act to fulfill. I'm sure Francis has the same problem.
Did you have anything to add to that, Francis?
Yeah, it gets really tricky because again, there is just that small pool. And so like for the last event that I did, we tried to really branch out and expand and really look at other type of managerial positions instead of director and VP, because we really wanted to make sure that the panels were diverse. But again, it gets hard because if it's someone at IBM or Google or Meta, you know, they have a very busy calendar and sometimes they get booked up months in advance. So you kind of just have to kind of think outside of the box and go, okay, well, who can be an expert in their field? That's not necessarily maybe a VP or a director, but someone who is, you know, let's say at the top of the food chain in a particular department. So sometimes we have to like think like that because again, as Charlotte said, it's just the same pool, which makes it frustrating because it's like there should be more available than just, you know, that small, like, you know, 100 pool of women, but it's better than it was before. But I feel like we still do have a long way to go to get more women in the director and VP roles.
And certainly also we're talking about an area that perhaps you can go back to the introvert question a bit, that so many people in the tech industry are editors, are sound mixers, software engineers, that they do consider themselves, you know, introverts. So do you have some strategies for them to be better at public speaking or just jump off the ledge and dive in themselves, which kind of dovetails into that what makes a great speaker? So some tips for the people who are technical and don't like doing it, and then what makes a great speaker? And that isn't always somebody who just likes to talk a lot.
I think it's about finding someone when you speak to them one-on-one who you could tell they're, I think you said it before, that they're passionate about what they do, and making them realize that the comment that they just made or the answer to the question they just gave is a perfect soundbite for a panel, and getting them to feel more comfortable. So what I've done in the past is I do a lot of rehearsals if I can with the panelists and the moderator to get them to get more comfortable, because it's one of those things where like the more you do it and the more you rehearse, the easier it becomes. We had that for the Coursera conference where the product managers who were going to be presenting on stage, they'd never done it before. And we were lucky that all 4 of them were women. So I was really, really excited about that because a lot of the directors were men, but here are these product managers and senior product managers and senior designers who were women. And they were very nervous. So I think we did 2 rehearsals virtually, and then we did like 2 rehearsals on stage. And by the time we did the event, they rocked it, they killed it. And when they got off stage, they were like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad we had all that prep time, because I knew exactly what to say. I knew where my mark was. I knew how to read a teleprompter, which is not as easy as some people think. Reading a teleprompter is a skill that some people have to learn. There's some that are great at it, there's some that are not. But they both rocked it because it was just, they practiced it. So I think when that person is initially like nervous or they're scared, like I was, doing something smaller maybe in the beginning, like have them do an internal meeting, be a presenter in an internal like town hall or in an internal or something like that, to kind of get their feet wet. And when you do something virtually, in front of, you know, you're on Zoom and you see that there's like 30 people or 40 people in the audience, it's not exactly the same as being on stage, but it kind of gives you the same kind of vibe because you are speaking in front because you can see how many people you're talking to. And that usually can help make somebody comfortable. So then once they're on stage, they've kind of done something similar before, and it makes it a little easier for them. And it kind of, you know, gets the fear off, takes the edge off. But to me, it's practice, practice, practice. That always seems to help a lot of people.
Just thinking about those, we have a lot of editors, colorists, sound, audio, people that are generally normally in the dark on their own for a lot of the day. We have them speaking at the show. It's harder to do a lot of prep with them because they are so back to back with projects. So a lot of the time I'm working with the head of PR or comms in Picture Shop or Molyneux or DNEG or any of these places. And I think they do a lot of internal prep with their team, because I don't tend to get access to some of these big name editors or colorists before the event. So for those people, I have to deal with the PR. So it's kind of a different situation. But back to the point of where when they're doing a presentation on Eddie Hamilton doing Mission Impossible, for example, it's his passion project. It's the thing that's taken up 2 years of his life. You get them talking about that, throw in a few clips, and it's an incredible session. First, you've got to get them there, because as I say, most of the time they're busy. So those people outside of the corporates, the creatives, for me, working with the PRs, developing the session with the PRs, them communicating to the talent, and then the talent finally arriving. They'll probably only have one 30-minute call with the chair, if that, or it'll be on site on the day, an hour before, with a bit of prep. So it's for different types of people with different skills, different creatives, from different organizations. I kind of have to sometimes just go with the flow and wait until they turn up, which is scary, and keep everything crossed. So there's different, as a content sort of director, I have to go with what that speaker wants if I want them there, and how everything's prepped. But as we keep saying, preparation is key. Relationships, having that conversation with the panel beforehand, getting to know people, following them on LinkedIn, seeing what they do, see what their career paths have been, getting to know your panelists a bit better, all that sort of thing. But yeah, it is different, producing different types of people, for sure.
So we did have 2 interesting questions here in the chat. And I do love this one, so I want to hear what both of you have as remarks for this. My fear of public speaking is in a larger forum that I don't think I will answer the question properly, or it's wrong. And that's from Angela Alacron, NBC Universal Local.
I did see a response in the chat too that said it's okay if you don't know. Or what I've done in the past, or what I've seen people do in the past, is they'll just ask, can you elaborate? Can you be a little bit more specific? It's okay to ask a question as a panelist to the moderator, because maybe you just don't understand the question. It does not mean that you don't know. It does not mean that you're not intelligent. You just want clarification. So you could just say, excuse me, can you just clarify that a little bit? Can you give me a little bit of more specific detail of what you're looking for? Or sometimes I responded, well, I've never been in that experience per se, but I did have something similar. And you're still offering a bit of expertise. You may not be answering the question in the specifics it was asked, but you're offering insight into something that's in the same kind of like line, or the same kind of vein of the question. But it's okay totally to throw it back and say, I'm not really sure if I'm the best person to answer this, but I did have this experience, and that's a little bit similar. It's actually, I find that it makes the panel more interesting when they're having kind of a conversation like that.
So I'm assuming this is at the point where perhaps live Q&A happens. I'm assuming, because as we've talked about, there shouldn't be any question you can't answer because you've done your prep, right? So we use Slido at our events, and what's brilliant about Slido, we no longer have, live, put your hand up, get a mic. So that takes out an element of the fear that you're not going to be able to answer a question. So the chair, who you've properly briefed and everything, the chair has Slido on their iPad or phone and can see all the questions piling in and can pick the questions. And we ask on there as well, if someone's got a question to direct at a certain person, they put their name, question for Lauren, question for Julia, whatever it is. And the chair manages that perfectly. And there's never really been anything. I mean, the AI event we ran last week, I've never seen so many questions. Me and Julia were like, you've never seen so many questions coming on Slido. It was ridiculous. But again, you've done your prep on the panel, so there shouldn't be anything that's going to come up and frighten you there. And you can also say on your prep call with the chair, you could say, I don't want to take any live questions. You could just say that. If there's a panel of 4 people, you could say, you know, if something comes up and I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that and I can answer that, you can say, I'll just put my hand up. You don't have to do it. You're not contractually obliged if you just want to stick to the panel questions. So I'd say don't let that be your barrier, because you can do your prep. You can say you don't want to answer Q&A. If they're using Slido or an online Q&A system, perfect. You know they're going to be funneled. And normally there's only 5-6 minutes left for questions anyway, and it's impossible to let everyone answer. So don't let that be a barrier at all, because it shouldn't be.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, proudly stating that it's not your area, or, you know, answering, you know, as Barry put in the chat, that, you know, it's okay to say that you don't know. And I often find in the positive way, because I'm all about the positive outcomes with all of these things, even for yourself, is it just say, you know, that is not my area of genius. So I am going to find the answer for you, or refer it to someone else on the panel, because you are there because you're an expert in your field. So this little piece of it could not be, you know, which is what's in your wheelhouse. So I think it's perfectly all right to actually just pass it along to somebody else. And it's often objective. I mean, unless it's right or wrong for a machine blowing up, I think it does also become a bit of your opinion, and you were hired to come and speak on your expertise and your opinions in an area. And then also Danilta had a great question that she said she was curious to know, what's the top reason that each of us in the audience stops themselves from pursuing speaking engagements? So certainly if people would love to unmic and share in that arena, or our moderator.
Actually, Kimberly, I'm going to suggest we put that in the chat, because we actually need to wrap this up, if you wouldn't mind bringing me back. Hey, sorry to cut this off, but we'd like to give people a little opportunity to explore other rooms on the platform.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, and actually one of the questions that was asked was just about tips for preparation. And one of the things that Gals and Gear recommends, and that I've done for myself, is that you really want to put yourself in the audience's shoes. So do your homework about what audience you're speaking to. A lot of times I go to events and I think, why does this person think that this is going to be useful information for this audience? Either it's too low level and the audience is experts in that field and they would want to hear more detail, or it's too much detail and they would want to hear much more bigger picture information. So it's really important, if you are pitching yourself as a speaker, or if you've already been picked as a speaker, to look at what the past sessions have been. You can ask the organizers, you know, who's your typical audience member. They can give you demographics. I'm sure Charlotte and Francis both have all the breakdowns of the people who come to their events at their fingertips. And they can give you that information so you can be a more informed speaker. So I just wanted to mention that before we wrap it up. Are there any other questions before we jump into rooms? I think we'll let some people go into the Meet the Speakers room. And I thought, Karen, if you wanted to come back, you could show, yeah, Sharon's going to share her screen just to show what the hub looks like. So if you want to jump in and talk to the speakers more, you can jump into our Meet the Speakers room, and they hopefully can jump over there with you if you have a few follow-up questions. We also have other rooms on the hub. So if you see someone that you know and you want to go hang out with them, you could maybe jump into the cafe and have a conversation with them. You can see all the names of participants on the left-hand side, which is one of the great features of the hub. We also have a skill zone that we're starting to build out. So we have links there from Blackmagic, from Chiron, NBC, Riedel. They all have amazing skills, workshops and courses that are free to you, and you can just get the links and go on there. We also have a job section. So we're highlighting jobs from some of our partners. So for example, the Olympics broadcast service is looking to hire lots of people for the Paris Olympics, obviously, and we've already referred a few of you over there. So if you know somebody who's looking for a job, check out the Jobs Hub. So we're adding sections every day. We've already been asked to add some more sections, so we're working on that. And we're highlighting our great sponsors who've made this all possible. So just a little tour of the hub. So what I'm going to suggest is, if you are thinking about being a sponsor, you have some other questions, you can meet me and Karen in the lounge. So you can just go to the left-hand navigation, jump over to the lounge. and meet us over there. If you'd like to talk to the speakers, then I'm going to suggest you jump over to our Meet the Speakers room. So that's it for today's Tequity Hub, Tequity Tuesday. You can
Which you did have your great slide for top.
Oh,
three.
yes, you're right. I did have one last thing to share.
Yeah, and I was in the panelists too, if they had top three. I mean, my top three was know that your passion will always read in the room, on the panel, wherever you're going to. That personally, I think the nerves you feel and you're translating those into being nervous and anxious, it's really adrenaline in your system about your excitement of being the best you can be in any speaking engagement. And I too concur with Amy on the know your audience. So much like you're tailoring your bio to different situations, you also should tailor your speaking engagements to it so that the audience can really walk away with a number of takeaways. And all of them don't necessarily always fit in each venue.
Right, absolutely. So anybody else want to jump in on a final tip from our speakers?
I would say, just prepare, like we talked about. Dress comfortably and in something that makes you feel confident, because if you feel confident, you'll project that. And that just remember that you're an expert and you belong on that stage.
So just remember, if you're joining by phone, it's a little tricky to jump into other rooms, but just go back to the map view where you can see all the different rooms. And you should be able to scroll down and jump into that Meet the Speakers room, and we'll let the speakers jump over there, and you just click yes for join Zoom room. And if you're thinking about sponsoring or you have some questions for me and Karen, you can jump over into the lounge and the networking section. Does everybody see what I'm talking about on the left-hand side of your screen? Can you show that one more time? Sometimes I open a second tab so that I can see all the rooms at the same time, if that makes sense. So I will be in the lounge momentarily. That's what the lounge looks like. And speakers, if you could jump over into the Meet the Speakers room, which you can
and I'm just going to add one more thing to that, Amy, too, for the tips of people that were feeling nervous and shy about speaking, is that if you're feeling uncomfortable that first time someone asks, just add to, because you've heard that Francis and Charlotte will keep asking you, say, I'm not really comfortable doing it this time, but please ask me again. Because you want them to know that you're interested, and maybe you just don't want to speak right now, but you may change your mind in a very brief period of time.
That is a great piece of advice. That's why Kimberly is a great director and casting director. Okay, I'm going to jump over into the lounge. Some of you might jump over into the Meet the Speakers room. Thank you so much for joining us on the Tequity Hub. It's fantastic to have you here. I will do a little shout out for our next program, which is December the 19th, Moving to IP Workflow, what it means for broadcast producers, engineers, and managers. We have a fantastic lineup. Ling Sun, who is the Chief Technology Officer for Nebraska Public Television, which made an entire shift to all cloud workflows. And she's going to tell us all about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Carolina Santos, who's the head of broadcast operations and engineering for ATP Media, which is obviously the folks who do all the tennis events around the world. So we're excited to hear from both of them. We'll see you next time on the Tequity Hub.